I always knew Ethel would test my patience one day, but I didn't expect she'd push me far enough to pack my bags without a second thought. It happened on a cold Tuesday morning in December, the kind where the house feels too quiet and the air too sharp. I was standing by my kitchen window, sipping lukewarm tea and minding my own business, when Ethel strutted in without knocking again. She wore a glittery emerald dress that looked like it cost more than my entire outfit, and I knew damn well it wasn't bought with her paycheck. Her heels clicked across my floor with that arrogant rhythm that always made me clench my jaw. "Audrey," she said, using that fake sweet tone she reserves for moments when she wants something, "I have the best news." I didn't respond. I didn't need to, she was going to keep talking anyway. "My family is spending Christmas here this year, all of them. 22 guests confirmed, maybe more." She said it like she was announcing the arrival of royalty instead of a small army. I blinked slowly. "You invited 22 people to my house without asking?" Ethel sat on my kitchen chair, the one I always sit on, crossed her legs, and smiled. "Well, Edward said it would be fine. And obviously you know how to host. You're basically the expert here, so yes, you'll handle everything, cooking, decorating, cleaning, the whole thing." There it was, the entitlement, the assumption, the invisible chain she thought she had around my neck. 5 years of being treated like an unpaid maid, a default housekeeper, a background character in my own home. 5 years of biting my tongue while Ethel turned my living room into her stage and my son Edward pretended not to notice. I set my mug down carefully, too carefully. "Perfect," I said. Ethel's smile widened until she registered my tone. "Perfect," she repeated. "Yes," I said, my voice steady and cold. "It will be perfect. Because I won't be here." Her face froze. For the first time since Edward married her, she didn't have a comeback. Her eyebrows twitched. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. "What do you mean you won't be here?" she finally managed. "I mean what I said," I replied. "I'm leaving, I'm not cooking, I'm not cleaning, I'm not hosting, and you can explain that to your 22 guests." Her entire world cracked in 1 second, and watching it was the first peace I'd felt in years. But she had no idea this was only the beginning of the storm I'd been preparing. Because what Ethel didn't know was that I had discovered something weeks ago, something that would shatter far more than Christmas. Ethel stood in my kitchen like someone had yanked the ground from beneath her feet. For once, her perfect hair, perfect dress, and perfect attitude couldn't save her. She stared at me with wide eyes, blinking rapidly, as if that would make my words rearrange themselves into something more convenient for her. "You're joking," she finally whispered. "I don't joke about my freedom," I said calmly. Her panic arrived in waves. She paced, she huffed, she wrung her hands like she was auditioning for a dramatic role. Then, as expected, she ran straight to the front door the moment she heard keys turning. Edward walked in, tired from work, tie loosened like he'd been fighting the world all day. He barely had time to close the door before Ethel pounced. "Edward, your mother has completely lost it. She's refusing to help with Christmas. She's leaving tomorrow." His brows knit together. "Mom, is that true?" I wiped the counter with a cloth, not because it needed cleaning, but because I needed something to do with my hands so I wouldn't explode. "Yes. It's true," he sighed, long and heavy, the way he did every time Ethel manipulated him into her drama. "Mom, come on, 22 people is a lot. You're really going to leave us with all that?" I almost laughed. Leave us with all that, as if the work wasn't always dumped solely on me anyway. "I'm not responsible for a party I didn't approve," I said. "If Ethel wants to host her entire clan, she can manage it herself." Ethel stepped behind him, gripping his arm like she expected him to be her shield. "See, she's being unreasonable. This is important for my family. They're expecting a proper Christmas." "And that," I said, "is not my problem." Edward rubbed his temples. "Mom, this is dramatic. You're overreacting? 5 years of unacknowledged labor. 5 years of swallowing disrespect. 5 years of being the person everyone relied on but no one respected, and he called me dramatic." Something hardened inside me. "I'm done," I said, "and I'm leaving tomorrow morning. End of discussion." Ethel's panic resurfaced. "But I already told them, my uncle, my cousins, they're counting on this." "That's your burden," I replied. "But what will they think of me?" she cried. "Probably the truth," I said. Edward frowned at me, confused. "The truth? What truth?" I looked at him for a long moment, longer than he deserved. Because the truth wasn't just about Christmas. It was about something far uglier that I had discovered. Something neither of them was prepared to face. Edward had no idea that Ethel had been hiding a trail of secrets, and I was the only one who knew the full story. Edward stared at me like he expected I'd suddenly take everything back and play the obedient mother again. That woman no longer existed. 5 years of being their invisible workhorse had carved a sharp edge inside me, and now they were finally meeting it. "Mom, please," Edward said, lowering his voice as if gentleness would make me bend. "It's Christmas, you can't just disappear." "I'm not disappearing," I said. "I'm removing myself from being used." Ethel let out a shaky breath. Her mascara smudged slightly, the first real flaw I'd seen on her in years. "Edward, do something, she's ruining everything." He turned to her with irritation. "Ethel, calm down, Mom just needs time." "No," I corrected sharply. "I need respect, something this house has been short on." Edward stiffened. He wasn't used to me challenging him, that was his problem, not mine. "Look," he said, shifting into that tone people use when they think they're being reasonable, "Ethel planned this Christmas for months." "No," I interrupted. "She announced it, there's a difference." Ethel's nostrils flared. "I was trying to do something nice for the family." "Nice," I scoffed. "You volunteered me without asking, again." She threw her hands up. "Because you're good at it. You always do it, and you always take the credit," I said. That hit her hard. She froze like someone had slapped her with the truth she'd been avoiding for years. Edward stepped in quickly. "Mom, this isn't helping." "What isn't helping," I said, "is you pretending this is the first time I've called out this behavior." He didn't respond because he knew damn well it wasn't the first. I walked toward the stairs, ready to end this conversation. But Ethel grabbed my arm, the first time she'd ever touched me, with desperation instead of arrogance. "Audrey, please, we can fix this." I pulled my arm back. "No. You broke it long ago." Her lips trembled. She looked at me, then at Edward, then back at me. Where are you even going?" she whispered. "Somewhere I should have gone a long time ago," I said. Ethel blinked rapidly. "At least tell us when you'll be back." "When I feel like it." Edward muttered. "This is unfair." "For once," I said, "it's unfair toward you, and now you finally understand how I've felt for years." Ethel sank into a chair, completely defeated, but not for the reason she thought. Because the real blow hadn't landed yet. They still didn't know that 3 months ago I uncovered something that would tear apart the false image Ethel had built of herself. And once her family learned the truth, Christmas would be the least of her worries. The night I found that folder in Edward's office, everything changed, and Ethel's biggest lie was finally exposed. If Ethel thought my refusal to host Christmas was the worst thing coming her way, she was blissfully unaware of the landmine sitting quietly in Edward's office drawer. The one I had opened 3 months ago while doing what I always did. Cleaning up after them. I hadn't meant to snoop. I was dusting shelves, reorganizing files, making space, things Ethel never bothered with. That's when I saw it. A blue folder wedged behind a stack of tax records labeled in Edward's handwriting. "Do not touch." Of course, that's exactly the kind of label that makes you pause. I pulled it out. It felt heavier than a simple file should. When I opened it, my stomach dropped. Inside were credit card statements with Edward's name, but charges that were clearly not his. Designer handbags, luxury skincare, foreign boutique orders, hotel reservations. Thousands upon thousands of dollars. At first, I thought Edward had lost his mind. Then I noticed the handwriting on the sticky notes attached to each page. "Don't tell Ed." "Emergency purchase." "He'll never notice." Ethel's handwriting. The deeper I dug, the worse it got. There were loan agreements too, small at first, then bigger. $1,200, $3,500, $9,000, all with forged signatures. And the worst part. One document showed she'd tried to use my house, my home of over 30 years, as collateral for a private loan. My hands shook on that page. A hot, quiet rage settled into my bones. She wasn't just entitled. She was dangerous. Instead of confronting her immediately, something in me shifted. I realized I had power for the first time in years. So I hired a private investigator, and he confirmed every suspicion. Ethel had built her entire image on smoke and mirrors. Pretending she made good money, pretending she contributed, pretending she was the perfect wife who managed everything. But behind the scenes, she was drowning in debt she created while dragging Edward down with her. And the more lies I found, the stronger my resolve became. By the time December arrived, I wasn't just irritated, I was done. And when she barged into my kitchen that morning announcing her grand Christmas invasion, she signed her own downfall. Because the moment she demanded I host for her family, I knew exactly what I needed to do. Not revenge. Not pettiness. Truth. The truth would destroy her far more effectively than anything I could ever say to her face. And tomorrow, when her relatives arrived expecting a flawless holiday, they'd discover the real Ethel, not the polished version she'd been selling for years. But before her family confronted her, I still had one final move to make, a move that would flip their entire world upside down. The night before everything exploded, the house was silent, unnaturally silent. Edward and Ethel had retreated to their room, no doubt whisper fighting behind closed doors. I sat alone in the living room, the folder of evidence beside me like a loaded weapon. For the first time in 5 years, the house felt like mine again. I didn't cry. I didn't hesitate. I planned. Every move I made that night was deliberate. First, I opened my laptop and pulled up the email drafts I'd prepared weeks ago, emails addressed to the 3 most influential people in Ethel's family. Her uncle Rowan, the one she constantly bragged about, the wealthy businessman who could change Edward's future. Her sister Elena, the responsible one, a financial analyst who despised dishonesty. Her cousin Matteo, the one in real estate, the one she claimed would help Edward get connections. I wrote to them politely, calmly, with the tone of someone concerned, not vindictive. I explained that Edward and Ethel were struggling financially, that I feared Ethel was making decisions that could put them all at risk. And then, accidentally, of course, I attached the clearest pieces of evidence. Not all the documents. Just enough to open their eyes. Their replies came faster than I expected. Rowan was furious, not at me, but at Ethel for lying to him for years. Elena immediately asked for every bank statement. Matteo wanted to know why Edward hadn't told him the truth. They were all coming early for Christmas, earlier than Ethel expected, and they wanted answers. Perfect. I adjusted my plans accordingly. When I told Ethel and Edward I was going to Miami, that was nothing but a strategic lie. I had no intention of flying across the country. I needed to stay close enough to watch everything unfold, far enough to stay out of the blast zone. So I booked a suite at a luxury hotel only an hour away, ocean view, breakfast service, surrounded by silence instead of demands. At dawn, I packed my bag, neatly, calmly, with an efficiency they had never realized I possessed because I used it daily for them. Before I left, I stripped the house of everything I bought or maintained. The good china, locked away. The decorations, removed. The food I bought weekly, gone. The cleaning service I paid for, canceled. If they wanted to host 22 people, they would finally learn what hosting actually required. I left a note on the kitchen table, leaving early. The house is yours, Merry Christmas. Audrey. At 7 o'clock a.m., I walked out of the house and didn't look back. The hotel was everything my home hadn't been for years, peaceful, quiet, respectful. I turned my phone on silent and let their calls pile up while I ordered room service breakfast like someone who finally remembered her worth. By noon, I checked their messages. 38 missed calls from Ethel, 12 from Edward. A flood of panicked texts, and the best one, a message from Rowan, "We're arriving tomorrow morning. We need to speak to Ethel immediately. Thank you for alerting us." I leaned back on the hotel bed, smiling for the first time in months. Tomorrow, the storm would hit, and for once, I wouldn't be the one cleaning up the mess. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared them for what happened when Rowan's car pulled into the driveway at 8 a.m. the next morning. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight pouring through the hotel curtains and the sound of waves instead of Ethel's shrill voice. I stretched in the soft sheets, checked the time, 7:45 a.m., and smiled. 15 minutes until Rowan arrived at my house. I ordered breakfast to the balcony, eggs, fruit, coffee. While I ate peacefully, my phone began vibrating nonstop. I let it buzz against the table like some desperate insect. I wasn't going to pick up, but after I finished eating, curiosity won. I checked the voicemails. Edward's voice came first, panicked, exhausted. "Mom, please pick up. The stores aren't open yet and Rowan's family is coming at 8. The house has no food. Ethel is losing it. She can't even find a plate. Mom, please call me." I shook my head. "Maybe try respecting me before needing me, Edward." Then Ethel's first voicemail shaky, attempting to sound calm. Audrey, can you just tell me where the decorations are, please? I can't have the house like this when they arrive. Then her second voicemail crying, why did you empty everything? The pantry, the fridge, everything's gone. Audrey, I can't host 22 people with nothing. Please at least tell me where the tablecloths are. Her third voicemail was full panic. Audrey, please answer. Rowan just texted, they're 5 minutes away. Edward is yelling, I'm shaking, and the house looks like a storage room. Where did you put everything? I didn't answer. I didn't even flinch, because chaos was exactly what needed to happen. At 8:18 a.m., my phone rang again. Edward's number, normally I would have ignored it, but this time I answered very calmly. Good morning. Mom, his voice cracked. They're here. Rowan is asking where you are. He thought you invited them, Mom. I sipped my coffee. Well, he's mistaken. You need to explain this. He's demanding answers. That's between you and Ethel, I said. But Mom, I'm on vacation, Edward. Handle it like adults. Before he could argue, I hung up and turned my phone off. Now I could picture it perfectly. Rowan stepping inside, seeing no food, no decorations, no sign of preparation. Ethel trying to plaster on a smile while looking like she'd been crying for hours. Edward fumbling through excuses. Rowan's stern face demanding the truth behind the lies she'd told their entire family. I almost felt pity for her. Almost. Around 10 a.m., after a hot shower and another coffee, curiosity pushed me to check my email. 2 new messages awaited me. Number 1. From Elena, the sister. Audrey, the situation here is disturbing. Ethel is contradicting herself repeatedly. Rowan is furious. We need to understand the full truth. Please contact me as soon as possible. Number 2. From Rowan. Mrs. Audrey, your daughter-in-law has been dishonest with our family for years. We insist on speaking with you directly. Please respond. I typed slowly, deliberately. Dear Rowan, I'm unavailable today. Ethel can explain everything, including the documents I sent earlier. Regards, Audrey. I hit send and leaned back, letting the satisfaction wash over me. Because for the first time ever, Ethel had to face her own mess without me cleaning behind her. And the real reckoning hadn't even begun yet. By noon, Rowan demanded a full family meeting, and what came out of Ethel's mouth shocked even me. By noon, the situation at my house had escalated far beyond simple embarrassment. Rowan wasn't a man who tolerated chaos, and Ethel had promised him a luxurious, magazine-style Christmas. Instead, he walked into a cold house with empty counters, bare walls, and 22 hungry relatives sitting on mismatched chairs. And no hostess? I could imagine the exact moment Rowan's temper snapped. His messages confirmed it. At 12:14 p.m., I received a new email. Audrey, we are holding a family meeting right now. Ethel's explanations are inconsistent. We need honest clarification. I didn't reply. I had no intention of rescuing her. Instead, I took a bath, ordered dessert, and only checked my phone after an hour. That's when I saw a flood of texts from an unexpected sender, Elena. Her messages came rapid-fire, unfiltered. She's lying. She's saying you hid food and dishes to punish her. Rowan is furious. Edward looks sick. We found some documents in her purse. Audrey, this is worse than you said. I raised an eyebrow. Worse than I said? Interesting. Then the phone rang, Elena calling. I answered. Her voice was sharp, tired, and shaking with disappointment. Audrey, you need to know something. During the family meeting, we confronted Ethel with the credit statements you sent. She denied everything. Then Rowan asked about the loans, and she claimed you encouraged her to borrow for house upgrades and future inheritance plans. I snorted. The woman lies like she breathes. That's not all, Elena continued. Rowan pressed her harder. She broke down and admitted she told the family you were leaving her the house in your will. My jaw tightened. Ah, I said. So that lie finally surfaced. That lie, Elena repeated, was how she convinced 2 different relatives to lend her money. She told them Edward would inherit immediately and that it would all balance out. She implied you were old, frail, and ready to pass down the house. Old, frail, and ready to die, lovely. And Edward? I asked. Elena sighed. He's in shock. He didn't know about any of it. Of course he didn't. Ethel had been manipulating him so thoroughly he couldn't see daylight. Rowan wants to understand why you left, Elena added. He thinks you've been protecting Edward all this time. I let that sit in silence for a moment. Then I said, Elena, listen to me. I left because Ethel treated me like a servant. I left because she crossed every boundary. And I left because she used my home, my belongings, and my future as leverage for her lies. That is the truth. Elena inhaled sharply, the sound of someone realizing the full picture at last. She needs to face consequences, she said. Our family isn't letting this slide. Good, I replied. She's overdue. Then Elena's voice dropped to a whisper. There's something else. Rowan wants to speak to you privately. He said he has news for you, something that affects Edward directly. My pulse stilled. News, I asked carefully. What kind of news? Elena hesitated. He didn't want to say it in front of Ethel. He wants to tell you himself. That sentence hit different. It wasn't about Ethel anymore, it was something bigger. I exhaled slowly. Put Rowan on the phone, I said, because what Rowan told me next didn't just expose Ethel, it changed everything I thought I knew about my son. Elena didn't waste time. Within seconds, she called Rowan over. I heard murmurs, footsteps, then Rowan's deep, controlled voice came on the line. Audrey, he said, I appreciate you speaking with me. I sat up straighter. This wasn't a man who danced around words. Rowan, I replied. Elena said you had something important to tell me. There was a brief pause, the kind that tells you someone is choosing their next sentence very carefully. Yes, he said finally, and I'm saying this to you privately because it concerns Edward, not Ethel. My stomach tightened. Go on, he exhaled slowly. Edward contacted me 3 months ago before any of this chaos. He asked me if I could help him secure a small business loan. My eyebrows shot up. Edward, he never told me that. He didn't tell Ethel either, Rowan added. He wanted the loan in his own name with no involvement from her. That already told me more than Edward ever had. He'd known something was wrong long before I discovered those documents. So what did you tell him? I asked. I told him I would consider helping, Rowan said, but only if he provided financial records. I needed proof of stability. He said he would gather everything. And did he? I asked. No, Rowan answered. Instead, someone else emailed me the documents. I already knew where this was going. You're talking about Ethel, I said. Exactly, Rowan confirmed. She got into Edward's email, found our conversation, and sent me forged financial statements, inflated income, fake savings, false projections. She tried to present them as Edward's. My jaw clenched. Unbelievable? Oh, it gets worse, Rowan continued. The documents you sent me, the real ones, revealed that Ethel had been withdrawing money from Edward's accounts without his knowledge. She sabotaged his credit to create dependency on her. She sabotaged him so she could control him. My breath caught. The image of my son, blind, trusting, manipulated, made my blood freeze. She isolated him financially, Audrey, Rowan said firmly. He wasn't just naive, he was trapped. I swallowed hard. Does Edward know? Not yet, Rowan said, but he's about to. And he's not going to take it well? For a moment, neither of us spoke. The truth hit me like a brick. Ethel wasn't just draining money. She was dismantling Edward's independence piece by piece. She was building a life where he would depend entirely on her, or rather on her manufactured version of reality. Rowan cleared his throat. One more thing, Audrey. Edward told me something only a desperate man says. My heart thudded. What did he say? He said he didn't know how to talk to you anymore. He said he felt like he was failing you. He said Ethel convinced him you preferred her decisions over his. I went still. So the barrier between us wasn't neglect or indifference, it was engineered. Ethel had been twisting every word, every action, every silence. She had separated my son from me without either of us realizing how deep the divide had grown. Audrey, Rowan said gently, your son has been manipulated just as much as you have. He needs you now more than you think. My throat tightened. For the first time, my anger shifted, not softened, but refocused. Ethel hadn't just disrespected me, she had been quietly destroying my son's life. Thank you for telling me, I said quietly. I'll deal with this. I know you will, Rowan replied. And Audrey, for what it's worth, our family stands with you, not her. We hung up. I sat completely still in my hotel room, letting the truth sink like a stone into the deepest part of me. Ethel had declared war long ago. I just hadn't known it, but now I was done being her victim, and so was my son. And when I returned home the next morning, Ethel's lies finally detonated right in front of everyone. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was stressed, but because clarity had finally settled over me like a heavy, inevitable truth. Ethel hadn't just used me, she hadn't just disrespected me. She'd poisoned the relationship between me and my son so slowly, so subtly that neither of us even noticed until Rowan ripped the blindfold off. By sunrise, I wasn't angry anymore. I was focused. At 9:45 am, I checked out of the hotel, stepped into the taxi, and watched the streets blur past. Every mile closer to my house felt like marching toward the battlefield, except this time I wasn't going to be the one taking hits. When the taxi pulled up, the scene outside my home was chaos. Cars lined the street. People paced in front of the lawn, talking loudly, pointing, shaking their heads. A full-blown family meltdown. Good. I stepped out of the taxi with calm precision. As soon as I shut the door, I heard a gasp. "Audrey!" It was Elena. She rushed forward, relief and exhaustion all over her face. "Thank God you're here. Where is everyone?" I asked. "In the living room," she whispered. "It's bad. They've been arguing for hours. Rowan demanded the truth from Ethel, and she's been changing her story every 5 minutes. Edward finally saw the real bank statements. He looks like someone hit him." My jaw tightened. Good, it's time he faced reality. Elena opened the front door, and every conversation inside died instantly. 20 pairs of eyes swung toward me. Edward stood near the fireplace, pale and hollow-eyed, clutching a handful of papers, the debt statements. I recognized them immediately. His hands were trembling. Ethel sat slumped on the couch, mascara smeared, face blotchy, hair tangled like she'd spent the night pulling at it. Rowan stood tall in the center of the room, arms crossed, posture screaming authority. When he saw me, he gave a respectful nod. "Audrey," he said, "we've been waiting." I stepped inside, closed the door behind me, and prepared myself. Ethel shot up from the couch, stumbling toward me. "Audrey, please tell them you're exaggerating, tell them you misunderstood. They think I lied to them, they think I stole." "You did," I said. The room erupted. Ethel froze like she'd been slapped. Edward's shoulders sagged with devastation. Rowan lifted one hand and the room quieted instantly. "Audrey," he said, "we need the full truth, every detail." I looked around the room, at the relatives who'd believed Ethel's fake stories, at my son who finally saw the truth, at Ethel who had built her entire persona on lies. "You want the truth?" I said. "Fine, sit down." Everyone obeyed except Ethel, who stood trembling. "She used Edward's credit without his knowledge," I began. "She lied about her income. She used my home as leverage for loans. She told your family I was dying soon and leaving her my house. She isolated Edward financially, and she treated me like a servant while doing it." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The words themselves hit harder than any scream could. Edward looked broken, not angry, not defensive, just shattered. He whispered, barely audible, Why would you do this to us, Ethel?" Ethel began sobbing, incoherent excuses pouring out, none of them believable. Rowan shook his head in disgust. Elena closed her eyes like she'd heard enough. The entire family watched Ethel unravel. For the first time in 5 years, the truth wasn't mine alone to carry. It was out, fully exposed, unavoidable. And the consequences were about to hit harder than any of them expected, because what happened next didn't just change Christmas, it changed the future of our entire family. The silence after my words was brutal, the kind that crushes excuses before they even leave a person's mouth. Ethel stood there, shoulders shaking, mascara streaked down her cheeks, a woman watching the life she curated crumble in front of 20 witnesses. Edward didn't move, didn't blink, didn't breathe. He stared at the documents in his hands like they were written in a language he'd never seen before. "Audrey," Rowan said solemnly, "thank you. We needed to hear this from you directly." I nodded once. The truth didn't need dramatics. Ethel finally forced out a shaky whisper. I didn't mean to. I was only trying to help. I just wanted us to look successful." "No," I cut in. "You wanted yourself to look successful, and you were willing to bury everyone else to get it." She flinched like I'd struck her. Edward finally lifted his eyes, red, exhausted, deeply wounded, and looked straight at her. "Ethel," he said quietly, "did you really forge my signature?" She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Her silence answered for her. Edward dropped the papers. They scattered across the carpet like broken glass. Rowan took a step forward. "Ethel, our family has supported you for years. We trusted you, and you used that trust to manipulate us into giving you loans built on lies." Ethel shook her head rapidly. No, I didn't want to hurt anyone. Yet you did, Elena snapped. You lied about your income, you lied about Audrey's will, you lied to the bank, and you lied to all of us. The room filled with murmurs, disappointment, disbelief, disgust. Ethel looked around desperately, searching for anyone who might defend her. Her eyes landed on Edward. Please, she whispered, voice cracking. Say something, don't just stand there. I did all of this for us. For our future, Edward's voice was barely audible. You did this for yourself. You lied to me, to my family, and to my mother. He turned away from her. That single gesture hit harder than any words could. Ethel broke into full sobs, collapsing onto the couch as if grief alone could rewrite reality. Rowan cleared his throat, voice firm. This can't be brushed aside. There will be consequences, Ethel, financial ones, legal ones, family ones. You will repay every cent you borrowed under false pretenses, or you will face the law. Ethel wailed, You can't do that, it's Christmas? Rowan gave a cold laugh. Christmas doesn't erase fraud. I watched her fold in on herself, the collapse of a woman who built her world on illusions and expected everyone else to applaud. Finally, I spoke, slow, sharp, and final. Ethel, from this day forward there are boundaries. You will not step into my home uninvited. You will not touch anything that belongs to me. And you will not use my name to buy another lie. She looked up at me with swollen eyes, pleading. Audrey, please don't do this. No, I said. You did this. Edward rubbed his face, then whispered the words that broke her completely. I need time away from you. Her mouth fell open. The horror on her face was instant. Rowan folded his arms again. Now, Audrey, what would you like to do next? I glanced around the room, the stunned relatives, the shattered son, the exposed liar. And I knew exactly what needed to happen. Because the next decision I made would determine whether this family healed or fell apart for good. Everyone stared at me, waiting as if I were the judge called in to deliver the final sentence. For 5 years, they treated me like the quiet background character. Now suddenly they wanted leadership. Fine, I would give it to them. I stepped forward, my posture steady, my voice controlled. First, I said, looking directly at Edward, You're coming with me to meet my lawyer tomorrow morning. We're putting legal protection around my home, my accounts, and anything tied to my name. Ethel stiffened. She knew exactly what that meant. Her access to my life was over. Second, I continued, Ethel and Edward will separate their finances immediately. No shared accounts. No shared credit lines. No shared authority. Ethel's head snapped up. You can't force that, Edward, tell her. But Edward only whispered, I think she's right. That was the moment Ethel realized she no longer owned him emotionally. I held her gaze. You dug this hole. You'll climb out of it alone. She sobbed harder, but I didn't soften. I wasn't cruel, I was finally fair. Rowan nodded. I'll assist Edward with the financial recovery. And Ethel, my family will not provide you a single cent unless you repay what you owe. Ethel screamed into her hands. Reality finally reached her. Elena stepped closer to her sister. You lied to everyone, Ethel, to us, to him, to Audrey. To yourself, you don't get to run away from this. Ethel whispered through her tears, I don't know how to fix this. I sighed, not out of sympathy but out of truth. You start by taking responsibility, not excuses. Not tears, responsibility. She stared at me with red, watery eyes, not angry now, just hollow. For the first time, she looked like someone who finally saw the wreck she'd created. Then I turned to Edward. We need to talk privately? He looked like a frightened boy again, the boy I raised, not the man Ethel molded. He followed me into the hallway, shoulders slumped. Mom, he whispered, voice raw, I didn't know she was doing all of this. I swear I didn't. I know, I said quietly, and that's the part that hurts me most. His eyes filled with tears he tried to hide. I thought you were just being moody these past few years. Ethel always said you were protective and emotional. I didn't know she was twisting everything. I placed a firm hand on his shoulder. Edward, you're smart. But you let someone else do your thinking, that ends now. He swallowed hard. What do I do? You rebuild, I said, slowly, carefully, honestly. He nodded, wiping his eyes. And Mom, he whispered, are we okay? I paused. Because the truth mattered now more than ever. We will be, I said. But first you need to show me you're willing to stand as a man, not as Ethel's puppet. He nodded again, more firmly this time. When we re-entered the living room, everyone watched us, especially Ethel. I took a deep breath. Here's what happens next, I announced firmly. Christmas continues, but under my rules, not hers. Anyone who wants to stay will help prepare the meal. Anyone who wants to leave may do so. The room erupted into movement, half relieved, half stunned. Ethel tried to stand, wobbling. Wait, Audrey, what about me? I looked at her with the calmest expression I'd worn all day. You, I said, are going to face the consequences with the same grace you pretended to have. Her lips trembled. She couldn't argue. Not anymore. But I wasn't done yet, because after setting the rules for everyone else, I still had one final boundary to draw, one that would change the rest of our lives. The room gradually settled, though the tension still clung to the air like thick fog. People moved into the kitchen, murmuring, trying to regain some sense of normalcy after the emotional earthquake. But Ethel stayed rooted on the couch, small and shaken, as if she feared the ground would swallow her whole if she moved. I remained standing. There was still one thing left to say, the most important part of all. I stepped forward, and every conversation in the house died instantly. Before anything else continues, I said steadily, I need to make one final thing absolutely clear. All eyes shifted to me. Edward stood at my side. Ethel looked up with dread. This house, I continued, is not a refuge for entitlement, lies, or manipulation. It never was. But for years, I allowed those things to live inside these walls. That ends today. Rowan nodded slightly, knowing exactly where this was going. Ethel swallowed hard. Audrey, please, I can change. No, I said. You will change on your own time, but not in my house. Her face crumpled. You're kicking me out on Christmas? No, I replied calmly. I'm setting a boundary. You are not banned forever. You are banned until you face accountability legally, financially, emotionally, without leaning on Edward or me. She blinked rapidly, stunned. I don't know if I can do that. That's the point, I said. This house is no longer the place where you avoid consequences. Edward exhaled shakily. Mom, you're right. Ethel's tear-filled eyes darted toward him. Edward, please don't agree with this, not today. He stood straighter, for once not bending, not softening. This isn't about Christmas, he said quietly. It's about everything you hid from me, everything you took from me. Everything you told me about my mother that wasn't true. Ethel collapsed into quiet sobs. I'll give you space because I need it, Edward continued. And because you need it too, I'm not abandoning you. But I'm not protecting you from what you caused. The words hit her harder than any blow. She shook her head slowly. I never meant to lose you, Edward swallowed. You didn't lose me. But you lost the version of me who believed everything you said. That silence was heavier than any shouting could have been. Rowan cleared his throat. Ethel, I'll arrange for you to stay with Elena for a while. It's better for everyone. Elena nodded firmly, not unkind, but steady. Ethel looked at me again, eyes red and devastated. Are you happy? She whispered. You've taken everything from me. I stepped forward, holding her gaze without a hint of malice. No, Ethel, I said. Your lies took everything from you. I just finally stopped carrying the weight of them. She had no answer. I turned to the rest of the room. Now, I said, those who want to stay for Christmas are welcome. But from this day forward, this house will only hold truth, respect, and accountability. One by one, people nodded. Rowan, Elena, Mateo, the cousins, even Edward. They understood the difference between cruelty and boundaries. And what I'd done was set the strongest boundary I'd ever enforced. Ethel stood slowly, trembling. Elena wrapped an arm around her shoulder and led her toward the door. Before stepping out, Ethel looked back one last time. I'm sorry, she choked. For the first time all day, I didn't respond with anger or coldness. I hope, I said, you mean that someday. The door closed softly behind her. For the first time in 5 years, the house breathed again. Edward stepped closer, voice quiet. Mom, thank you. I looked at him, truly looked, and saw my son again, not the shadow she'd molded. We have a lot to rebuild, I said. We will, he answered. Christmas dinner wasn't perfect. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't planned. But it was honest, and that was more valuable than anything Ethel ever tried to create. And yet, even after all of this, I still had one final step to take, one that would secure my future, protect my son, and ensure Ethel never held power over us again. The morning after Christmas was quiet, the kind of quiet that didn't feel empty but healed. The house didn't vibrate with tension anymore. No entitled footsteps. No manipulative voice echoing through the halls, just peace. Edward sat at the kitchen table, nursing a cup of coffee like he hadn't slept all night. He looked tired but cleaner somehow, like someone who finally saw his own life clearly. "You ready?" I asked. He nodded, eyes earnest. "Yes." "More than ready?" We drove together to my lawyer's office. There were no arguments, no frantic questions, no defensiveness. Just a son sitting beside his mother for the first time in years without someone whispering poison into his ear. Robert, my lawyer, greeted us with a calm, knowing smile. "Audrey," he said, "I've prepared everything we discussed, and Edward," he nodded at my son, "I'm glad you're here, this affects you too." Edward inhaled deeply, bracing himself. "Let's do it." Robert spread out the documents, page after page of protection, stability, and future-proofing. First document, the family trust. The house was now legally protected. It could never be used as collateral, never be sold without my consent, and certainly never be accessed by Ethel under any circumstance. Edward looked relieved and heartbroken. "She really tried to take advantage of all of this," he whispered. "She did," I replied. "But now she can't." Second document, financial separation. Edward's accounts would be secured. His credit frozen temporarily for protection. Every unauthorized card closed. Every fraudulent loan investigated. He signed with trembling hands but firm resolve. "I didn't think I needed boundaries," he said. "Now I understand I needed them years ago." I nodded. "Everyone needs boundaries, Edward, even with the people they love." Third document, residency control. This was the final nail. Ethel would have no right to enter my home ever again unless I personally approved it in writing. No more surprise visits, no more barging in, no more entitlement disguised as family duty. When Edward saw that clause, he exhaled a long, emotional breath. "Mom," he whispered, "thank you for protecting us. Even when we didn't realize we needed it." I placed a hand on his. "You're my son, I'll always protect you, but I won't let myself be destroyed in the process anymore." He nodded, a quiet promise forming in his expression. After signing the last document, we walked outside into the winter sunlight. Edward paused on the sidewalk, staring at the ground, then at me. "I'm sorry," he said softly, "for not seeing it." "For not seeing you, you see me now," I replied. "That's what matters." He hugged me, not the quick, distracted hug he'd given the last few years, but a real one that said he understood. One that said he was ready to rebuild, without lies, without manipulation, without Ethel's shadow over us. And then he whispered something I never expected. "I don't know what's going to happen with my marriage. But I know what won't happen. I won't let her hurt you ever again." I nodded against his shoulder. "Whatever decision you make it with honesty, not guilt." When we returned home, the house felt lighter, warmer, mine. I poured us tea and we sat at the table together, just mother and son, rebuilding something Ethel didn't realize she'd tried to destroy. And for the first time in a long, long time, I felt truly free. Free from unpaid labor. Free from manipulation. Free from the weight of expectations. Free from a woman who treated me like a stepping stone in her imaginary social ladder. This wasn't just the end of Ethel's control over us. It was the beginning of a life where I finally put myself first. A life I should have chosen years ago, but one I claimed now with full certainty, with strength, and with peace. The end.